Alright guys, welcome back to Urge. We're moving on in the subclass series with the third and final Runeterra D&D crossover League of Legends thing, which is the roguish archetype of the wild card.
This thing.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one right there. The tricky trick.
I struggle with that, I'm sorry.
Looks like the art is definitely based on Twisted Fates. You get some cool cards and stuff on here, but if you're new to the subclass series and to the channel, what we're going to do here is we're going to go through all of the abilities gained in the subclass. Then we're going to rate the subclass based on its roleplay value, its combat value, and its overall class synergy, based on how the abilities gained in the subclass improve on the base class abilities.
For sure.
So, without any further ado, we're just going to jump straight into it. It's got a lot of stuff going on, so we're trying to keep it as short as possible. First up, we have tricks up the sleeve. You basically choose, when you choose archetype at level 3, you learn guidance, cantrip. And at level 9, it has a range of 30 feet, and you can cast it as a bonus action. So you're able to help out some buddies at range, and as a bonus action instead of an action, so definitely can be helpful depending on certain circumstances.
At level 3 also, you get wild cards Gambit, so you choose proficiency with one of the following gaming sets. It's either a dice set, a dragon chest set, or a playing card set. And then you essentially have a subclass of your subclass based on which one of those three things you take. The loaded die lets you get a pool of d6 equal to your sneak attack damage. You can use those pool of d6s specifically to reduce incoming attack rolls towards you. You can normally, at the beginning, you use one d6 at a time. Level 9, you can use 2 at a time. At level 17, you can use 3 at a time. You get all of them back on a long rest. So you can.
It does take your reaction.
And it does take your reaction to use the ability, which does kind of conflict with your uncanny dodge.
Yeah.
Then Dragon Chess, you have 3 different maneuvers to pick from. As a bonus action, you can do this equal to a number of times your charisma modifier. Again, kind of weird for a rogue to have to kind of pump into charisma. Yeah. We'll cover that a little bit later. If you choose Dragon, you can choose a creature within 30 feet of you. The first time that creature makes a successful attack roll before they start of your next turn, they deal extra damage equal to your level in the class. So you can buff an ally essentially to do some extra damage. And then you can choose Griffin. Your movement speed increases by 10 feet. It does not provoke opportunity attacks. Essentially, it's a move around and get out of jail free if you need to. You can disengage and then get out of there more efficiently. Or you can choose Sylph, which lets you and all friendly creatures have advantage on dexterity saving throws to start your next turn. Helpful against fireball and things like that, but it is only just a 5-foot radius around you, so they'll be standing right next to you. So not a great area, but an interesting effect, to say the least. And finally, you have the best choice. I said that out loud, didn't I? Which is the playing cards, which is Twisted Fate, or if you're an X-Men fan, it's Gambit from that fantasy as well. If you have not yet used your sneak attack when you make an attack, you can use you can flick one of your magical cards at somebody within a range of 30 feet. It's a ranged attack. Use your dexterity modifier to attack with. It deals slashing damage, 1d4 plus your dexterity modifier. And then when you roll damage, you look at whatever that d4 was, and it gains a additional random effect based on the table listed below, which we will put up on the screen to make it easier. Essentially, it's Blade, which is you get to do your sneak attack damage, plus on the start of your next turn, they take half of that damage again at the start of your next turn. So it's a sneak attack and a half.
Yes.
It rolls over. Shackle cuts their speed in half, and it can only make one attack as part of its turn. So if it's something that has multi-attack, 2 or 3 attacks, 4 attacks, it can only attack once per turn. So really good against a big single target.
Right.
Then you have Heart, which is a little busted. You can immediately you do your sneak attack damage, and you immediately regain a number of hit points equal to half the damage dealt, which includes the sneak attack damage. Any excess hit points are regained become temporary hit points. So if you deal 36 damage with a sneak attack and you only had lost 24, you get 12 temporary hit points on top of it. So fun times. And if you roll a 4, which why would you not pray for a 4 every time? You get to choose which of the above 3 effects takes place and immediately happens. So 3 choices. Cards is the right choice. Dragon Chess is an interesting choice. Loaded die, interesting choice, but kind of conflicts with your uncanny dodge,
class abilities.
What you already get as a baseline rogue.
Right.
Yeah, that's all at level 3.
Definitely really crazy and really cool. Probably one of the coolest subclasses I've seen in a while. Then at level 9, we have Shifting the Odds. You are acutely aware of how to quit when your head vanishing in a flash. Basically, as a bonus action, you can disappear with a dramatic flourish. Each creature within 10 feet of you makes a dexterity saving throw equal to your DC of 8 plus proficiency plus charisma modifier, again coming in there, taking 4d10 force damage, probably the best type of damage you could deal, or half as much on a successful one. You then teleport yourself to an unoccupied space you can see within 120 feet of the original location. Once you use the ability, you can use it again once you've finished a short or a long rest. So a once per rest ability does use your charisma modifier, deal some extra damage, get out of jail free as a bonus action. Yep. Pretty solid. Then we have Twist of Fate at level 13. After rolling initiative, but before the first turn of combat, you can choose to swap places in the initiative order with one creature you can see. If the creature is one of your allies, the ally must agree to swapping initiative with you. So basically, it's going to let you kind of have a little bit of influence on how initiative comes out. If you roll really low, you can just swap your initiative with whatever monster that you're fighting against or creature you're fighting against to make them go at a low initiative order.
Right.
Or if you have an ally who needs to go first or has abilities that can pump you up, like someone who can cast haste on you, for example, and you are really high, you can swap places with them so they can cast haste on you before you take your first turn. So just a nice way to kind of influence the flow of combat right from the get-go. Definitely very interesting.
Make sure that fighter or paladin gets into range, you get your sneak attack.
Right.
As
get
well.
that Gloomstalker, their first attack bonus, first round bonus. Joker Wild at level 17, your capstone ability. As a bonus action, you can take on an incorporeal form during which you gain the following benefits. You regain all expended power for your wild card's Gambit feature. So depending if you took the cards, the dragon chest, or the dice, you're going to regain all of those uses. So what you probably want to do is use all those first, and then you use your bonus action to regain all the uses of those.
Right.
Then you also gain your movement speed doubled, and you gain resistance to all damage and are immune to grapple, paralyzed, stunned, and restrained conditions. Whew. You can also move through objects and creatures as if they were difficult terrain. And if you end your turn inside a creature, the creature takes 1d10 force damage and is shunted into an adjacent space within 5 feet of their original location.
That's a fun word. Shunted.
Yeah, shunted is different. The incorporeal stat lasts for 1 minute or until you are incapacitated. Once you use this feature, you cannot use it again, so you complete a long rest. So once a day, you get to go wild, Joker Wild, and go fast, not take damage, take half damage, and move through objects. And of course gain, all the charges back of your abilities, which is pretty crazy.
Yes. You get to go nuts. I mean, it's like a paladin capstone.
It really
like any of the paladin subclasses have a similar ability, but you just get this one 3 levels before they get there, so you can laugh at them. Well, they still have to wait for so much more experience or milestones to get their capstone.
Definitely pretty ridiculous. But that being said, we're going to move straight on to the rating section of the video. First up, we have the roleplay section. So when we're rating the roleplay value, we're looking again, I have to give the asterisk here, is that we're already anticipating you acting out your class fantasy, history, lore, background, all that stuff, acting out your abilities and everything. What we are scoring is based on what is written in the subclass. So we're looking at the abilities mechanically, how they improve on the basic class when it comes to interacting with NPCs, interacting with the world around you, non-combat scenarios, avoiding combat, things like that. Basically, things that are done in D&D outside of the initiative combat flow. So, looking at all these abilities, not a whole lot going on option-wise to impact those interactions with the world around you. This is definitely very focused on the combat side of things.
Yep.
There are some small things here with your proficiencies with like your gaming sets or your guidance cantrip and things like that.
Because guidance is an absolute busted cantrip in RP. Right. But the only difference is you get it as a rogue, we normally wouldn't have it, and you cast it at range. It has a bonus action. Right. Bonus action thing, not as big of a deal unless you wanted to cast another spell in RP, because you could, because it's only cast a cantrip.
Yeah. And I mean, also there's, teleport can always be used in RP since we're trying to get from point A to point B. Sure. I would say that kind of falls under travel or moving, parkouring terrain, dodging puzzles, things like that. Mm-hmm. So that can always be used in a, very niche RP sense as well. So a little bit light on the RP side. We went with a 2 out of 5. Definitely very interesting class and definitely more focused on the combat side, as Alex will let you.
Imagine that. If we had 2 things we say the most, it's the asterisk of what the RP things mean. Yes. It's if it's not focused on one thing, it's focused on the other. Yes. It's kind of our thing. Anyway, is what it is. So on the combat side of things, the flavor here is off the charts, as with all 3 of the subclasses in this book. Probably the best collection of flavor that they've put out in a long time, to be honest. Because it's pretty crazy.
They're all very cool.
But far as actual mechanically executed, I think because you give the 3 different choices to pick from with loaded die, dragon chest, and the playing cards, depending on which one of those 3 you want to make your proficiency in, it's very hard, I think, to balance those out mechanically.
Right.
And that shows here to me and to us as we discuss this. I mean, the loaded die is cool because you do get to reduce the chance of something hitting you, but you already have an ability that reduces damage and also uses that same function of a reaction.
Right.
So if you do get hit, you take less damage from that attack. Well, this just for trying to prevent you getting hit in the first place, and they both use your reaction. So it does give you an extra choice, which is nice, but at the same time, you probably would rather it do something else besides take your reaction. The dragon chest, getting a buff of friend for doing extra damage is nice. But and by far the best choice there, because Sylph giving advantage on saving throws for dexterity is great, but it's only a 5-foot range.
Right.
So you're most of the time only helping you, maybe the person right next to you. But if you don't need one for a turn, then guess what? That ability is just wasted.
Right.
So playing cards obviously becomes the most consistently reliable choice.
Yeah.
But again, it's also kind of random in the fact of, will you get extra sneak attack damage? Will you get to heal yourself? Will you just reduce their speed and attack? All of them are helpful all the time, in some capacity. But you aren't in control of what happens there, which is fun flavor wise. Kind of like your wild magic sorcerer, in a much smaller scale.
Definitely.
But again, trying to go through some of these quick as possible. Getting the shifting the odds is a great teleport for Rogue to get out of trouble. Blip out of there and do 4d10 force damage, which is one of the 2 or 3 best damage types for sure in the game, as far as just not being resisted by anything.
Right.
The Twist of Fate thing is probably one of the most, to me, individually interesting abilities we've seen.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's any other way in D&D 5e that you can swap orders of initiative with someone. At least it's not in non-unearthed arcana.
Yeah, like not necessarily swap, but like there's ways to add an initiative, advantage.
Yeah,
or
advantage,
to add your intelligence modifier.
Sure, yeah, there's a lot of buffs to it and things like that. But once everybody has rolled, then the choice you then modify it from there. Well, he rolled higher than me. We'll take his spot. We'll go before him. That's interesting. And then of course, Joker Wild is an incredible ability at level 17. It straight up is a paladin-like ability that you get 3 levels before they get theirs.
Right.
And that's what it's a great ability. All there is to it. You become barbarian raged as far as resistance to damage, get all your uses back from whatever path you took.
Yeah.
So a lot of talking there to come up to a 4 on combat.
Yeah.
Mostly because of the conflict with your reaction usage. Again, with the fighter one in here, with the Renegade Fighter subclass, which you should check that one out as well, of course. Having to dip into charisma to get usage there, because normally rogues,
strange.
It probably won't be a 0 for you as a rogue, but it definitely won't be a stat you would normally prioritize.
Right. It makes you think twice about it.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of falls back into where we get into the synergy side now is there's a few things, we kind of briefly touched on it, where there's some awkwardness, I feel like, where some of your options take up places for other things, like your loaded dice is going to interrupt your evasions and uncanny dodges and stuff, which kind of feels awkward, so it makes me not really want to take that.
Right.
At least for me personally,
Sure.
I would rather go for something more consistent. But then also, the other 2 options that you have are heavily reliant on your charisma modifier. Having that extra stat, when you kind of have abilities based on a stat that's not normally part of your subclass. Like, for just a quick side comment here is with the new Path of the Depths Barbarian, it uses your strength mod. Which is your primary stat.
Which you're going to be capped anyway.
If it was based on your dex mod, for example, that would make them significantly better, because you're not having to split your stats as much. But with this one, you basically have to completely change the thought process of building the character.
Right.
You have to build it more around. You build the character around the subclass instead of vice versa.
Right.
Subclass around the character.
Correct.
Which is fine. It can make for some definitely interesting characters and definitely interesting builds. But something to keep in mind there's just some awkwardness. We went with a 2.5 out of 5 just because there's definitely some synergy, but there's also some awkwardness we felt like in how the subclass is built. But by no means does this detract from the combat. I think the primary focus of this subclass is the cool factor and the RNG of the cards, I think, is where the main primary focus is. And I think where that is really cool and definitely very strong when it does pop off. You just have to be a little bit more careful, maybe because you're not going to necessarily have as much, maybe not as much con as you normally would, because you're going to get into charisma to get more uses of your stuff.
Right.
Definitely very interesting, definitely very fun subclass. But with that, I think that's going to wrap this one up. Definitely very flavorful, very interesting, very unique. I think it's definitely very unique. But guys, that's going to wrap it up for this one. So if you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so when new videos come out. Always appreciate the subs and everything. If you've been watching our videos and not been subscribed, please consider hitting the subscribe. It helps us a lot. So please consider that.
Push the button.
And as always, guys, thanks for watching.